Pastor Square. Pastor Emmett Square.
Sorry, I had to unmute myself. Let us pray. Most gracious Heavenly Father, we thank you for this day. We thank you for this hour. We thank you for this group of concerned people who've come to do work for this community and this country. We ask, oh Lord God, that as we meet, that you will meet with us, that you will anoint our minds and strengthen our hands to the work that's set before us. And then, oh Lord God, we ask that the work we do here will abound to the betterment of those who need it most. And Lord, if there be any acclamation, if there be any proclamation, we're very careful to give you all the praise and all the glory. We know we can't do anything without you. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen.
Pat, you're on mute.
Got it. Thank you, Pastor Square. First, we want to thank our sponsors. Some have supported 50 Hoops since we began, others for over 15 years. Genentech, Gilead, Amgen, Janssen, Bristol Myers Squibb, and Takeda Oncology. Let us give a virtual applaud for them making these events possible. After 23 years, 50 Hoops will transition our national events to our 50 Hoops Legends. These legends, some have been with us for over 2 decades, have worked with 50 Hoops live and produced over 100 patient education events. We've partnered with major cancer centers and churches large and small. All have answered the call to produce events based upon 50 Hoops template, from dinner lectures to community advocacy site training for doctors and clinical researchers. Today, we recognize and salute these legends.
Today, we not only transition 50 Hoops into their hands, we also transition these outstanding individuals and organizations from 50 Hoops network of coordinators to 50 Hoops legends. Each is a legend in their own right. Each legend can stand alone in conducting powerful and effective virtual and live workshops that replicate 50 Hoops events.
It is our pleasure to bring you this premiere today. In fact, we'll bring you over a dozen premieres this year, each highly unique and individual to the legend presenting, yet each clearly synchronized with the 50 Hoops style we've become popular for over the years. Prostate Cancer 101, cancer conferences and health fairs, African Americans in clinical trials, community advocacy matchmaking, mobile cancer conferences and workshops, navigating cancer in the Corona Zone, and our popular Fabulous 50 to Sexy at 60.
Today, we will be celebrating our graduates, Mrs. Cassandra Harris and Dr. Thomas Polascik.
Cassandra Harris. We met Cassandra in 2005. She was part of the National Black Leadership Initiative on Cancer, or NBLIC. She graciously invited us to Houston, and we had one of our first Prostate Cancer 101 events at the Power Center, partnering with the Links, Deltas, Us2, AARP, and the Pan-Hellenic Council. Over the past 16 years, Cassandra has always said yes to whatever 50 Hoops has asked her to do in Houston, and without question, introducing us and bringing in some of MD Anderson's leading African American and multiracial physicians like Dr. Curtis Pettaway, Dr. Alicia Cook, among others over the years. She is gracious, kind, committed, creative, and a masterful national networker.
Dr. Thomas Polascik. We started working with Raleigh-Durham in 2012 when 50 Hoops had an online radio show entitled African American Health Matters, featuring Dr. Nicolette Warren, our lead contact back then. We revisited in Raleigh-Durham in 2015, meeting legend Valerie Worthy, also with NBLIC, who referred us to Dr. Thomas Polascik. The team coordinated a magnificent African Americans in clinical trials dinner workshop. Over the years, our relationship in Raleigh-Durham has been highly fruitful. This is one of the cities that has presented almost all of the 50 Hoops events live, including our accredited community advocacy site training to nearly 100 researchers and doctors at the Duke Cancer Institute, and later, our Fabulous 50 to Sexy at 60 at the River Church with Valerie Worthy.
And because of you, Cassandra Harris, Dr. Thomas Polascik, 50 Hoops is celebrating 23 years as a unique African-American nonprofit patient and medical education company that has moved to an unprecedented level of achievement. To have among us someone like you with an unmatched commitment and dedication to African American patients and communities within your power to change and influence. You are indeed a legend. Mrs. Cassandra Harris, Dr. Thomas Polascik.
And now, as founders of 50 Hoops, we officially ask you to turn your tassel from right to left, signifying first your right to be a national legend, both in your community and nationally, and to the left to represent a new chapter of our continued commitment to service to your church, your community, and from henceforth, African American communities throughout the nation. And today, for utilizing 50 Hoops replications in your outreach annually, legends, please turn your tassel.
Let the commencement event begin. Dr. Polascik.
Well, thank you very much for. I wish to congratulate Cassandra Harris. Cassandra is the Health Education Manager for MD Anderson's Department of Health Disparities Research. With more than 35 years of experience in health education and community engagement, Ms. Harris is often the face of MD Anderson and the community's go-to person when they need help in connecting with individuals and resources. In addition to her role in connecting MD Anderson researchers with diverse communities for research collaborations to prevent cancers and improve health, Mrs. Harris has chaired the National Black Leadership Initiative on Cancer's Houston Coalition since 2002. Ms. Harris is a past member of Komen's Education Committee volunteer. She has contributed to the planning of Komen's 2016 and 2017 African American Health Equity Initiative conferences and coordinated focus groups with African American women to obtain feedback, which led to the creation of Komen's landscape analysis to address breast cancer disparities in the greater Houston area. Mrs. Harris has served as past chair of the Breast Health Collaborative of Texas. She's held local, state, national, and international leadership positions of service. She has longstanding relationships in the community of Houston, has collaborated with coalitions, African American health ministries, community organizations, and support groups to understand and find solutions to reduce cancer health disparities. Congratulations, Cassandra.
Thank you. Thank you all. We have a few more minutes. I believe we have some rolling slides. All right. Thank you so much, Pat and Ann. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the 50 Hoops Legend event. I'm Cassandra Harris, and I'm your moderator. I never thought that responding to a request to collaborate on a community event would lead to this day. Ed, Pat, thank you for 23 years of educating African American communities about cancer, clinical trials, and for bringing our networks together to showcase the great work of our local experts. I'm honored to serve as the first 50 Hoops Legend. Today, you will engage with a dynamic roster of medical, health, and community experts. Our program includes a keynote address, panel discussions, and opportunities for you to share your thoughts. The first panel will be moderated by Dr. Shanjala Connors. She is an assistant professor of health and behavior sciences at the University of Houston downtown. She's a transdisciplinary educator and researcher. Her current research explores breast health reconstruction determinants and decision-making in African American women. Our second moderator is Ms. Chara Bowie. As a director of health services, Ms. Bowie's goal is to improve health outcomes of the constituents of Houston's Precinct 2 by improving healthcare access, decreasing health disparities, and increasing equity. She has 23 years of experience in mental health as a licensed professional counselor, supervisor, as well as a deep understanding of the correlation between physical health and mental health. We'll begin with our opening address by Dr. Lusted Matthew from the FDA's Oncology Center for Excellence. He is a medical oncologist for thoracic head and neck cancers. He has played a significant role in the recent approvals of several drugs and FDA products for the treatment of lung cancer. Dr. Matthew represents FDA in several workshops and lectures. His primary interests are cancer disparities, thoracic malignancies, and precision medicine. Let us welcome Dr. Matthew.
Thank you, Ms. Harris. Congratulations to you. Congratulations to you, Dr. Polascik. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Luxon Matthew, and I am delighted with this opportunity to provide a few comments and set the stage for the following presentations. If you have to put a title to what I'm going to share with you in just a couple minutes, and it would be called Clinical Trials, Cancer, COVID-19, and Your Community. And the question is, what bonds these things? What bond do they share together? Let's talk about cancer. As a thoracic oncologist, 50 years ago, and keep it with the theme of 50, President Nixon signed into act the actual National Cancer Act. And that act itself basically propelled so many opportunities in regards to treatment, management to cancer. Whether you talk about the NCI, whether you talk about clinical trials, at the time when it was signed, it was very controversial and a lot of people thought it was too ambitious. Looking at it back 50 years, I think we all have benefited in some form or fashion with the therapies that are available in cancer, in treating cancer and managing cancer. When we move over and we look at the actual clinical trials, we notice something about clinical trials. To be honest with you, clinical trials has a very unique phrase or term in specifically African-American communities, right? To speak honest, it doesn't have a clean track record. However, what has transpired over the past 50 years? Change for the better. Change that involve more participation of African Americans, of Hispanics in clinical trials. Change that represent African Americans more. And an initiative now today more than ever to have a diverse population, a diverse group representing clinical trials for drugs that will be administered to to the general population. If you want to talk about change, how can you not talk about COVID-19? COVID-19 was not expected. No one can say they could predicted COVID-19. The change that had brought forth by COVID-19 is also marred. It has been very difficult. It has been very challenging. A lot have been lost due to COVID-19. A lot of negative change we have encountered. However, the story is not over yet. There is still hope. I personally believe that there are changes that will take place due to COVID-19 that will make communities better, that will make individuals better, that will make this world better. And then when we look at communities, when we look at our communities, I was born and raised in the inner city of South Florida in Miami in the projects called Overtown. This young, foolish kid actually believed his mom and dad that with his faith in Christ and a good, solid education, nothing can stop him. I actually believed my mom when I was 2 years old, and she said that one day you would be a physician. I kept that my entire life, thinking that there was something that she knew that I didn't know about. And I went about pursuing my education with that determination. I was able to go on from my inner city high school to matriculate at Harvard University, graduated from there, went on to Biomedical College, and then through Cincinnati, I met my wife at Harvard, but went to Cincinnati training and ultimately went to Hopkins Oncology. And from there, I went to here at the FDA. Again, young inner city from a family of 11, 4 brothers, 4 sisters, no reason that I should be here today. No reason but God. And so I'm grateful for the opportunity that I have here to set things off, to start things off, and to hear stories going on in Houston of people here on this, in this talk, in this Zoom meeting. It's just simply amazing. And when I heard about it, the first thing I said was superheroes. That's what you are. Each and every one of you, you guys are superheroes. And while you may not get the credit or the full credit you deserve, just trust there's someone above that's watching. And in due time, in due season, as Pastor Square said in his prayer, it's gonna come. You will be acknowledged. You will be recognized. So I'm gonna get out your way. I just wanted to come by and say, keep it going. Cancer, COVID-19, whether you talk about communities, whether you're talking about, the main thing is change. I'm encouraging you to continue to be a change agent. Change is inevitable. It will always take place. But what are you doing to bring forth positive change? Obviously, just hearing the little that I hear so far, it sounds like you're doing a great job. So I'm just here dropping by to say, keep it going. Congratulations to everyone, and thank you for this opportunity.
Awesome. Thank you, Dr. Matthew. We're so happy you were able to join us. Now it's time for audience participation. We have our first poll. There are 3 questions in each of our polls. We ask that you answer each question, then press submit. I believe we should be able to see the responses when all of the votes have been cast. Please take a look, and if you like, make comments in our chat box about the results. Thank you. Now on to our panel. Dr. Connors, you're up.
Hello, thank you for the invitation. We'll start with our first panel and I'll do a brief introduction of the panelists. First, we'll have Dr. Rain Royce. She's a physician at Texas Children's Hospital, assistant professor at Baylor College of Medicine, and she's the associate director for community engagement there. And she'll be talking about African Americans and clinical trials. Then we have Dr. Midget Tasomi. She's an assistant professor at Breast Surgical Oncology, MD Anderson Cancer Center, and she'll be talking to us about triple negative breast cancer. And finally, we have Ms. Paula Johnson, Bureau Chief of the Harris County Area Agency on Aging, and she'll be talking about COVID-19 and African Americans. So Dr. Rice, will you start your presentation now?
Hi, and thank you so much for having me. I am delighted to be here with all of you. I am going to speak extemporaneously because I really want to discuss with you guys the importance of African Americans participating in clinical trials. So as the nice introduction alluded to, I am a pediatric oncologist. I primarily take care of patients with leukemia and with lymphoma. And I primarily take care of patients who have relapsed or refractory disease, meaning their cancer has come back. I also am a physician scientist, so I work in the research laboratory and also focus on translating often first in human clinical trials to the actual clinic. So it's a really exciting space that I work in, and I obviously collaborate with a number of different people. As you guys can see, I am an African-American physician scientist, and as my primary job is to run clinical trials for patients who have leukemias and lymphomas, it has always been of utmost importance to me to ensure that therapies are equitable, to ensure that all patients have access to these trials, especially patients from underrepresented backgrounds, most importantly, African Americans. This has always been a passion for me, so I'm so excited to join with 50 Hoops to discuss this with you guys here today. I don't think I have to belabor the point to this audience that there are a number of justifiable reasons why African Americans and some other racial and ethnic groups may actually be hesitant to participate in clinical trials. Historically speaking, we're all familiar with the Tuskegee syphilis experiment, and this is one that has risen to the forefront. We all are familiar with Henrietta Lacks and use of her cells without informed consent. But there are a number of other incidents that have occurred that are not as well known. And so I understand the skepticism, I understand the hesitancy, but my job is to be an advocate for the patients, for their families, but also for the safe conduct of research. So one thing that's really important to point out is that African Americans are often disproportionately affected by a number of cancers and other diseases. So you may have heard that African Americans may be more likely to have type 2 diabetes or to have hypertension, but many are unaware that African Americans also are disproportionately affected by cancers such as multiple myeloma, often cancers such as prostate cancer, are often in more high-risk groups, even with pediatric leukemias and lymphomas that I take care of. How have we made the advances that we've made in cancer therapy? Through research. I very distinctly remember being in my first year of my pediatric oncology fellowship training and a senior seasoned oncologist telling me that had this been 30 to 40 years ago, this patient and family that I just quoted upwards of 90% chance of treating them and curing their cancer forever, they probably would have had a 20% chance. That was striking to me. And it turned on a light bulb to me, and it helped me understand that this was solely because of research advances. So I get the skepticism. What I wanted to do was make sure that I was aware of all of the safeguards in place because of historical events, such as the Tuskegee syphilis experiment, where these men were untreated for syphilis and did not even sign an informed consent for this so-called study. Specifically because of these past events, there are a number of safeguards where by law, clinical trials have to represent diverse populations that they serve. This is by law. By law, clinical trials have to ensure that the participants have undergone an informed consent process, which is not just declaring what is going to happen to them, but also discussing any safeguard that's in place, discussing all of the potential risks, also discussing possible other alternative therapies, and most importantly, giving an opportunity to answer questions. I am a big proponent of what I call the consent triangle, where if I'm speaking to a family, especially a family that looks like me, African-American patients, Hispanic patients, I often will say, is there anyone else that you'd like to have present for this consent discussion? Unless it is an emergency, people should have an opportunity to think about whether they want to participate in a clinical trial, to mull over questions, to involve perhaps their primary care physician, to involve a trusted family member, perhaps even a pastor. And I found a lot of success with this. So what I will tell you is the safeguards that are in place for all patients on clinical trials make me confident every single day that we are in a place in 2021 where we should be robustly enrolling African Americans and other underrepresented communities in clinical trials on them, because we need to be able to have access to the same therapies as everyone else. In cancer care, it's not unusual that a patient will be treated with what we know to be the standard of care, or most likely to put this patient into remission. But because of the robust research that we're doing in the laboratories, a new agent will come, a new drug, a new medicine, a new type of therapy. I'm what you call an immunotherapy doctor. So I work with taking cells from patients and actually genetically modifying them in the laboratory, training them to target their cancer specifically, a less toxic way of targeting cancers. It's really, really, really important that we involve all types of patients in these therapies. Often I come across situations where a promising drug is only available on a clinical trial. That's because this drug has not been approved by the Food and Drug Administration yet. And so often I will encounter patients or families who are very hesitant to participate. And so it takes a while, and it takes a discussion. And to be completely honest, there's no time limit on the amount of time that I need to spend with the family or a patient, clinical circumstance allowing, to help them understand exactly what the research entails, how that therapy will differ if they weren't on the research protocol, and what data I have to make us believe that this therapy could potentially be beneficial for them. It has become my passion as a scientific researcher looking at cancer therapies to ensure access and to really partner with organizations such as 50 Hoops and community organizations to make sure that we have these sorts of panels and forums to get the questions out there, to bring in people who look like us, who participated in clinical trials, to bring in research coordinators and study staff and nurses. I work on the institutional review board at my institution. I've worked on data and safety monitoring boards. And it's really important for people to be empowered, understand the safeguards in place, and understand the importance of ensuring that we have a seat at the table when promising therapeutics are being tested in patients. Thank you so much. And I will close there. And I'm looking forward to any questions and participating in the panel discussion.
Thank you, Dr. Rouse. Now we will have questions at the end. And so you can be typing those in the chat. Now we will move on to Dr. Tresemme to talk about triple negative breast cancer.
Thank you so much. Let's see, am I able to share my screen? It doesn't look like it. One moment.
Checking now. I'm sorry, doctor.
Oh, okay, no worries. Well, while that's getting set up, I'll just say thank you so much for the invitation to talk with you today. And congratulations to Cassandra as well. She's such a great partner here at MD Anderson. And my name is Medigit Tashoma. I'm a breast surgical oncologist and here at MD Anderson, and I'm going to talk about triple negative breast cancer and share some highlights in this short period of time. And I know Dr. Bennett noted in the chat that more people need to learn about triple negative breast cancer, and I definitely agree. But I was also impressed that it looked like 40% already had some knowledge. So that's great.
You should be.
Okay, let me check. Thank you. Okay. Got it. Thank you so much. All right. So I have a few slides to go through. Okay. So, one of the most, I would say, transformative things that has happened in breast cancer over the past few decades has been our understanding of breast cancer as a very heterogeneous disease, meaning that there's not just one type of breast cancer, but many different subtypes of breast cancer, and all which have differing clinical activity and aggressiveness, for lack of a better word. In clinical practice, we use receptors that are on the cancer cells to help us characterize these different subtypes. And so those receptors are the estrogen receptor, progesterone receptor, and HER2 receptor, or we call ER, PR, and HER2 receptor. And triple negative breast cancer is one subtype of invasive breast cancer. It accounts for approximately 10 to 20% of all cases. And it's called triple negative breast cancer because it's characterized by the lack of expression of those three receptors, the estrogen receptor, progesterone receptor, and HER2 receptor. And so this can be quite a clinical challenge for us because a lot of our treatments for breast cancer, a lot of advances that have been made are targeted treatments that are specifically focused on attacking the cancer cells by targeting those receptors. And in triple negative breast cancer, those receptors are not present. So those therapies are not effective. It also is a more aggressive type of breast cancer characterized by more quickly growing tumors, higher grade tumors, and a higher risk for recurrence, especially early recurrence within the 2 to 3 year period. We also find that there's a higher prevalence of triple negative breast cancer in young women who are diagnosed with breast cancer, as well as in African American women. And one of the other really transformative areas has been in our understanding of triple negative breast cancer specifically, that this type of breast cancer is also not one size fits all or all the same, but that there are several molecular subtypes and that these subtypes may have differing clinical activity. And so a lot of research is really focused in this area to help identify potential targets and way for us to develop targeted treatments for triple negative breast cancer. And then another important thing is that this type of breast cancer is more commonly than others to be associated with the BRCA mutation, which is a genetic mutation which increases the risk of breast cancer and also ovarian cancer. And so it's really important for our patients who are diagnosed with triple negative breast cancer to have genetic testing, and this is recommended for women who are diagnosed with triple negative breast cancer under the age of 60. And you can see here on the schematic that I have borrowed from Breast Cancer Facts and Figures that actually the majority of women with breast cancer have what we refer to as hormone receptor positive breast cancer. And this is true for all women. So here you can see a graph that's showing the breakdown of breast cancer subtype by race and ethnicity. And you can see that this largest bar is hormone receptor positive breast cancer. But when you look at the bar at the top, which is representing triple negative breast cancer, you can see that Black women are more commonly diagnosed with triple negative breast cancer, approximately 21%. And compared to other women of other races and ethnicities, this is essentially double what is seen there. And some of the reasons that this can be very important, and this was alluded to, by the previous speaker, is that we do see significant disparities in breast cancer by race and ethnicity, which have been very well established and described. one such aspect is that white women are known or seen to have a higher incidence of breast cancer, but Black women carry a higher mortality from breast cancer. And some of this may be that we do find breast cancer in Black women to be diagnosed at younger ages with more aggressive subtypes, as we were talking about, and also with more advanced stage at diagnosis. And, you know, the reason for this is definitely multifactorial. It may involve a lot of factors, but definitely one that can contribute is tumor biology, which is what we're talking about now. So I just wanted to go through a few aspects, or I'm a clinician, so from this standpoint, but triple negative breast cancer, how is it diagnosed? So it really is diagnosed the same way that any breast cancer is diagnosed. So women may be asymptomatic, and it may be found on a screening mammogram, which is recommended to be done annually starting at age 40. Or a woman may present with concerning symptoms like a mass in the breast or changes on the skin, thickening, and orange peel-like appearance, redness, or changes to the nipple, with the nipple kind of pulling in or developing a scaliness or crusting, or nipple discharge. So any concerning symptoms or things that are abnormal should prompt a physical exam, a thorough evaluation with breast imaging with mammogram and ultrasound. And if there is anything suspicious, a needle biopsy to really evaluate the tissue, make the diagnosis, and then also to characterize this receptor profile, estrogen, progesterone, and HER2 receptor. And then, of course, important aspect is family history, as this can have and play an important role in our understanding of risk for breast cancer. So all women, and I am saying mostly women, but it is true that men can also get breast cancer. That's very important, although less commonly triple negative subtype. But once diagnosed with triple negative breast cancer, it's really important, I cannot stress enough, to seek care from a multidisciplinary team that's focused on breast cancer. So it is definitely best to treat breast cancer in this team approach. We know that one of these doctors alone is not good enough treatment. It really does take this team approach to be able to fully evaluate the patient and help develop the treatment plan to keep, all the options open, and also to keep, to have the best and most ideal outcomes. It's also important to obtain advanced breast cancer breast imaging to evaluate the extent of disease in the breast, the extent of disease in the lymph nodes, which can help us to calculate the stage. And then also in some cases, we do need to do staging of the whole body. So, CT scan and bone scan to take a look to see has the cancer spread anywhere else outside of the breast and lymph node area. And then, like I mentioned previously, for all women diagnosed at age 60 or under, it's important to do genetic testing if diagnosed with triple negative breast cancer, with or without a family history. And then together, we work to develop a treatment plan for that individual patient. So I just want to talk a little bit about treatment, but not too many details. And I'm happy to answer any questions that anyone has. But really, I would say the backbone of treatment for triple negative breast cancer, I would say, is chemotherapy. So, many years ago, we used to think of breast cancer as a surgical disease, but really, I think we understand it now to be a systemic disease and one that can affect the whole body. And so surgery is an important part of curative treatment, but it is not the only treatment. So oftentimes we will recommend what we call neoadjuvant chemotherapy, which means giving chemotherapy before surgery. And the advantage here, especially for triple negative breast cancer, is it can shrink the disease. As you can see from this mammogram here, you see a patient who was diagnosed with a pretty large tumor here in the breast. And after receiving chemotherapy, you can hardly see anything remaining there in that area other than the clip that was marking the tumor. So it can help downstage disease, help us to do smaller and more limited surgeries, facilitate breast conserving surgery in women who are interested in that approach. Also, it can help us understand about the breast cancer itself, and that information can help inform prognosis. So for example, some women have very chemosensitive disease, and like this patient here. So when we go to surgery and we remove the tissue that's in the breast, we may not see any more cancer in that tissue, which is fantastic news, and what we call a pathologic complete response. And that has been associated with improved survival and improved other outcomes in the long term. It doesn't mean that the cancer can never come back, but it just really reduces that risk for that patient. Versus another patient who may have very chemo-resistant disease, where there may be a large tumor that does not really shrink very much with chemotherapy. And when we do surgery, we may still find an extensive amount of cancer in that tissue. Then we know that that patient may need additional chemotherapy after surgery or other treatments to help reduce the risk of recurrence, because that risk of recurrence is much higher. And I'm happy to go into any more details about that, but this is, I would say, a really large treatment strategy that we typically employ in triple-negative breast cancer. After chemotherapy, we will often do surgery, and that can be breast-conserving surgery, just removing the area that's involved with cancer and treating with radiation, or a mastectomy, depending on the extent of involvement of the cancer. And one thing that's important is that even though triple-negative breast cancer is a more aggressive type of breast cancer, it doesn't necessarily mean that a more aggressive surgery is needed. Really, surgery is dependent on the extent of disease that's there in the breast and the lymph nodes, more so than the type of cancer. We also will recommend surgery for the lymph nodes based on if they're involved, the extent of their involvement. And then of course, reconstruction for should always be offered to patients, especially if they're interested. And then radiation is important as well. And radiation is also driven by the extent of involvement in the breast and the lymph nodes as well. And then I did want to just mention clinical trials. I totally agree that clinical trials, I mean, the only reason we know anything we know about breast cancer is because of clinical trials and all the patients who were gracious enough to participate and help us in gaining this understanding. And these trials can offer, cutting edge and even, the opportunity for what may be better than our standard of care therapy, and really drive our field forward to be able to help us to provide better and better outcomes. So we definitely have several clinical trials for women with triple-negative breast cancer at MD Anderson, and they really range from trials, related to an intervention or a treatment strategy, related to surgery, or even related to decision-making, and specifically in African-American women with triple-negative breast cancer. And then lastly, I'll just say that, this is very exciting, but just this week, the FDA approved Pembrolizumab for high-risk early-stage triple-negative breast cancer. And Pembrolizumab is a immune checkpoint inhibitor, which is a form essentially of immunotherapy that is an anti-PD-1 antibody. And so it had been studied in a clinical trial, a large clinical trial, and what they essentially found was that the addition of pembrolizumab to chemotherapy in women who had triple-negative breast cancer had improved what we call PCR rates, or better response to treatment in the breast and lymph nodes. And they also, with a more updated analysis, found that there were there was an improved what we call event-free survival, meaning less risk of, actually, let me get it for you here, a 37% reduction in the risk of disease progression, which precluded surgery, the risk of local or distant recurrence, and the risk of a second primary cancer or death with taking the pembrolizumab in addition to chemotherapy before surgery, and then again, continued after surgery. So just, you can see here this week, this was approved by the FDA. And so I think this is a really exciting time, and this will change our standard of care treatments. And even now conversations are ongoing at MD Anderson on how to incorporate this. So this was all driven by this clinical trial. And so I think, continued hope is on the horizon. And that's all I have. I'm open to any questions, any thoughts, any comments. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I think I'm scanning the chat. I don't think I see any. We do have one for Dr. Rouse. that asked about how do people find out what clinical trials are available?
This is an excellent question, and I think that Cassandra put some information in the chat, but there are a number of ways. I love what Cassandra put in the chat because it's very easy to do. It's a 1-800 number. You can literally Google clinical trials for and fill in what you're looking, and you will find a variety of websites. The most important thing is that I often tell my patients to partner with an organization that is actually geared towards their disease. For example, Leukemia Lymphoma Society, because they often can be paired with a patient advocate who can help them navigate websites that are more geared towards health professionals, such as clintrials.gov, for example. Anyone can go on that website and identify clinical trials. But even for me, as a physician scientist and health professional, it is very difficult to navigate and understand whether you're actually eligible or not. So I think we have a list that we can probably compile and send out. But I think if you, maybe Cassandra can put again in the chat, because I think it may have gotten lost, these couple of websites, but you can actually link with an organization of your choice. You can call the number that Cassandra listed. You can Google patient information about clinical trials, and often will be sent to certain links based on that.
All right, thank you. So we're going to move on to Ms. Johnson now.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for the invitation, and Cassandra, I congratulate you as well. And I think it's just an honor and a privilege to be on a panel with those who have come before me. And so just to tell you a little bit about who we are, you can go to the next slide. So I'm the Bureau Chief. As I said, my name is Paula Johnson, the Bureau Chief for the Harris County Area Agency on Aging. And we are co-located within the city of Houston, within the Houston Health Department. Next slide, please. And next slide. And you can keep going to the next slide. So we go back one, please. Okay, thank you. So we are one of 28 area agencies on aging, and we call ourselves AAA just for short because it's a lot easier. But we are one of 28 in the state of Texas. We are the largest AAA in the state of Texas. AAAs are nationwide. We were founded through the Older Americans Act, and which now the Administration for Community Living is who provides our funding down through the state, through HHSC, to the city of Houston, who has the contract. And so some of you may be familiar with us, some of the services that you may be familiar with, or our congregated program, which most of you may know it as Meals on Wheels. But some of the things that we provide is our information assistance and referral, which is our front door to our services, which is our call center. Our benefits counseling for anyone that needs any type of assistance. We are primarily heavily focused on Medicare, but we also do Medicaid, as well as any other type of public benefit. Care coordination for those who may require services such as personal assistance, respite, adult day, emergency response. Our caregiver support coordination, where we offer support for our caregivers, because especially during this pandemic, when everything shut and closed, there was definitely a need for support for our caregivers who may have had their loved one in a facility in an adult day, and now had to take the older adult with them and to care for them. As I stated, our congregate meals, our home delivered meals, everyone currently is being served through our home delivered meal program because of the pandemic. We also do evidence-based intervention programs, where we do such programs as A Matter of Balance, the Aging Mastery Program, Tai Chi. And so we have a variety of exercises and evidence-based programs. Chore maintenance, assist anyone in their homes with maybe some light light house cleaning and maybe some heavy duty items around the home, personal assistance, residential repair, as well as, and let's see, just trying to see, it's transportation that we provide. We cover all of Harris County. We also, our age is from 60 and older, but we also support or assist our caregivers. Some of the things I didn't mention was legal assistance. We also pretty much contract about 90% of our services are contractual. And so we do have attorneys on hand to assist, as well as our benefits counselors. Next slide, please. So when the pandemic hit in April of 2020, one of the things, of course, we had to shut down our congregate programs, had an impact on the services that we were providing, because we were pretty much telling seniors to stay home, to stay safe. And one of the things that we were able to do that came out of this for us, and it's another service that we're providing, is we started doing in-home testing. And so being able to offer, so that seniors didn't have to come out, we would have someone go to their home and do that. And since the pandemic, we have provided in-home testing to over 1,200 individuals. The other thing that happened around once the vaccines started to become available was that our director, because of our program, shared our number and asked if we could help schedule the community, our older adult community, for vaccines. And so we expanded our operations, our call center operations, and we typically had a staff of RNA of about 5, and we had enhanced that to make to about 12. And then when that door opened, we went to 70. And so our first day of when the information went out was our call volume hit at 8,000 calls, which overwhelmed our system, of course. And so we were able to move down into the Georgia or Brown, expand our operations, and assist with calls. On our COVID-19 vaccine update, and this is all that you can find on the City of Houston website, but if you will see here for our older adults, we hit 85.5% of older adults in Harris County, well, in the City of Houston, that had at least had one vaccine, one dose, and then 75.4% that were fully vaccinated. And if you look below, it gives you, based on race, is that African Americans at 24.1%. Next slide, please. And so some of the things that we are doing is that we're currently doing, because we realize that we are still not there. And so the health department, and we are partnering with the health department in our outreach, is still to go out. Every single one of our programs are asking people when they call us if they have been vaccinated. And if they have not, we very delicately ask them, why or why not. And because we are still able to provide vaccines, we are able to schedule them for vaccines. And so we're out in the community. We are looking at those zip codes where there is high positivity rate, but low vaccination rates. And so we're out in those communities trying to dispel some of the myths that are out there, but also to do as much as we can to make sure that everyone, it is everyone's choice, their decision to make whether or not they receive the vaccination. But what we want to do is make sure that we dispel any myths that may be out there and afford everyone an opportunity to receive their vaccine. Our call center is still available, which is our 832-393-4301 number, but we also have a COVID vaccine that's strictly focused on scheduling anyone of any age, which is at 832-393-4220. As I mentioned, some of those special initiatives. So with the testing, when we saw that opportunity, it also gave us an opportunity when that had such a positive response, was to also offer in-home vaccinations. And so we have been actively doing in-home vaccination. And for our criteria, when initially the vaccines were, I'm not going to say scarce, but when they were first being rolled out, we developed a criteria, and we were doing just 90 above. But we were able, once we had enough vaccine, we were able to increase our eligibility. So right now, if there's anyone that is 80 years of age or older, if they can hit any one of these criteria, 80 years of age or older, if they are bedbound, if they utilize ambulatory transport to get to and from, whether it's doctor's appointments or having to go to wherever they need to go, dialysis, anyone with a disability, anyone 79 years of age or younger with any health conditions, and veterans. And so that's what we are doing as special initiatives with testing and vaccines. Another thing we did was we were able to partner with another company, and for right now I can't think of the name, and I will definitely reach back and put that name there. But we provided COVID monitoring for the community, and this allowed seniors the ability to be able to. They were given a tablet, and they were able to monitor their vital signs, basically their temperatures, if they felt any differently, if they were having the signs and symptoms of COVID, and they were connected with a nurse and a physician. And so this was a very positive project that we were able to do, but it was very, had positive outcomes. And so we've since ended because it was only set for a time period, but that was a very successful also. Next slide. So just to give you some of the highlights, we were in operation our call center for 13 weeks. We had 392,955 inbound calls because people were from the time we opened to the time we closed, we're looking for those vaccine appointments. We scheduled over 100,000 appointments. We made over 4,700 referrals within our AAA services. We scheduled 469 in-home vaccinations. We also did readiness and willingness surveys. We surveyed our population to determine what we could do to help others get vaccinated. We provided rides to vaccine site. We still do that. If there's someone who wants to get a vaccine and they need transportation, we provide that as well. And we offered 222 rides back to COVID testing sites. Next, please. So another opportunity, another program that we have worked on, and I really want to thank Dr. Matthew, and as well as the last two presenters who have sort of touched on this. About 3 years ago, we partnered with one of our other AAAs in Dallas in the All of Us research program. And so this is a program that is funded through the National Institute of Health. It's a 10-year project, and the end goal is to find out why people get sick or stay healthy. And the goal is also to have 1 million participants. And I added precision medicine. And so we have been participating with them to provide primarily education about the All of Us research program. And so looking at, especially talking about cancer, and the question that came in about how can I participate, is this All of Us is meant to help providers to focus on, after they gain all the information, and is to be able to look at precision medicine. And I always use the example, you have someone that is urban, you have someone that is rural or suburban, and that the three individuals cannot be treated the same because it depends on what is in the environment. And so they look at, not only will look at your health, but look at where people work, where they play, what things are available. Are they in the food desert? Are they not in the food desert? And so these are just some small things. And so the website is there for all of you to go and take a look at and to do some research and determine if this is something that you are interested in participating in and to get a little bit more information. Next slide, please. So these are some ways that you can participate. You can just do an online survey. You can provide a DNA sample if you so choose. You can share electronic health records if you decide, blood and urine samples or physical measurements. It is really up to the individual on what they feel comfortable with sharing. And last slide, please. So that is my last slide. If there are any questions, once again, I just want to thank you for this opportunity to present. There are many times we get the questions that no one knows who we are, but we are here and we can answer pretty much any question. If we do not know the answer, or if it is a service that we do not provide, then we partner with the aging community here in Houston and all in Harris County to help come together and try to pull answers or responses together for the older adult community. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Johnson.
Thank you.
Everyone, if you have questions, please put them in the Q&A box. We do have a poll, and Ms. Paula, I believe, might be here a few more minutes to answer any questions you may have of her through the chat. So we'll go to our poll number 2. Thanks.
Cassandra, can we go to the next part and I'll check the polls because it just relaunched the same poll.
Okay, great. I saw that there was a question in the chat for Ms. Johnson. It was about similar programs in the District of Columbia.
Yes, we AAA's, area agencies on aging, are nationwide. And so if you can Google it and just put in area agency on aging, District of Columbia, and that should pull up your agencies. They're built on counties, because Harris County here in Texas is so large. That's why I covered just Harris County. But there are other 27 other AAAs, because there's over 200, I think 258 counties in Texas. And so the AAA will cover a certain amount of counties. They may be located in one county, but they may cover multiple counties. So if you would just Google area agencies on aging, sometimes they don't say area agency on aging, they may have an entire separate name, but when you put that in, it should pull that up for you.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Are we ready for the poll?
We're ready.
You'll have about 45 seconds to respond. And then I'll turn it over to Ms. Bowie for panel 2. Terrence, is the poll available? There we go. Here are the responses. Are you likely to participate in cancer research? 81% said likely. Common breast cancer treatments may not work for women with triple negative. It's true. Should COVID-19 vaccines be required for students? 74% said yes. All right. Thank you for your participation. At this time, I'll turn it over to Ms. Bowie.
Thank you, Cassandra. Good afternoon, everyone. I want to introduce our panelists for this second segment of our program. First, we have Ms. Stacy Lofton. She's a senior policy planner of health equity at Harris County Public Health, and her topic will be Getting to Yes, engaging our communities to collectively overcome vaccine hesitancy. Our second presenter is Dr. Oche Ndefa. He is the Director of Community Engagement, Center for Biomedical and Minority Health Research at Texas Southern University. And his topic is a HBCU's approach to addressing racial health inequities. And next we will have Dr. Gina Bennett, a breast cancer survivor, advocate and founder, Reconstruction of a Survivor, Houston, Texas. And her topic will be support for breast cancer survivors. So Ms. Stacy, if you'd like to start your presentation.
Thank you, Chara. So as Chara mentioned, my name is Stacy Lofton, and I lead health equity and justice initiatives at Harris County Public Health. And I am going to talk to you today about our efforts to engage Harris County residents to address COVID-19. From the beginning of our response at Harris County Public Health, we really understood that health inequities have persisted, right, and disproportionately impacted Black and Hispanic communities. We knew that Black and Hispanic individuals would be the hardest hit and be impacted first. We saw it with HIV/AIDS, right, in the 1980s. We saw it with H1N1 in 2009, and we continue to see those disparities, even more persistently with chronic diseases such as cancer. And so this understanding helped us to develop our early thinking and our practice strategies to address quickly those disparate health outcomes as inequities, truly. And so to guide our thinking, we developed this framework that you all see. It's based on the work of Philip Blumenschein and others. It's a bit detailed, but it really outlines how our societal values, as we discussed earlier, really impact the policies and practices that create inequitable health outcomes. And it's really rooted in intentional disinvestment and other forms of neglect associated with racism. And so when we looked at our county, we particularly focused on those neighborhoods that have been marginalized and minoritized, right? Those were the neighborhoods that we prioritized in our work. And we do that across all areas of our services and public health programs at Harris County Public Health. And so this framework is complex, but like I said, it really helps us to understand those root drivers of disparate outcomes, especially those that we see more vividly, right, through this pandemic. And so we looked at those neighborhoods that have been historically and are currently segregated. We looked at neighborhoods with that were densely populated, and we looked at low wealth neighborhoods when developing solutions for COVID-19. We, of course, looked at the level of access, right, to high quality healthcare and across the county. So this framework began our thinking around COVID-19, but because public health is a collective type of work that we all must engage in, we developed a practice framework to really help solidify our operations. Next slide, please. So I really want to hone in, and we've used, we talked about AAA earlier with Ms. Paula, but this is our AAA framework. It's a bit different in that it focuses on availability, accessibility, and actionability, right? Those are usually some of the midstream issues that result from the intentional disinvestment and kind of racist policies that exist. And so what we did when we kind of set up our operations was we thought about the availability of COVID-19 testing and later on COVID-19 vaccinations, right? And so it was really important for us to not only ensure that vaccines, for instance, were readily available, particularly for those who live in historically under-resourced neighborhoods and medically underserved neighborhoods, right? But just because vaccines are available, it doesn't necessarily mean that individuals will be able to access the available vaccines in their neighborhood, because there may be a number of barriers that exist. Physical barriers for persons who experience or who live with a disability. Also social barriers for instance, an undocumented immigrant who's uninsured and doesn't have traditional forms of identification. So we knew that it was important, particularly as it relates to accessibility and actionability, to engage with a diverse array of residents and communities in order to make sure that not only were these services available, but that they were accessible to those populations who were disproportionately impacted and thus had the greatest need. And then we also thought about actionability, right? So even if a service is available and accessible, that doesn't necessarily mean that I will take whatever steps are necessarily to utilize those services, because I may not feel comfortable in those settings. And we know from our discussion earlier, Tuskegee experiment, right, Henrietta Lacks, there are a number of incidents within history, right, that we can readily recall, and even our own current experiences at times, right, with the healthcare system, and those experiences and engagement with the government. Right? Those types of experiences influence whether or not how we act and whether we act. And so we really thought it was important to engage with residents and community leaders to make sure that we understood why individuals were hesitant, right? Talking about the surveys, the focus groups, the community health worker engagement, outreach initiatives to be on the ground and really hear from residents firsthand what the barriers are to seeking COVID-19 services in this case. Right. And we also wanted to know whether or not we appropriately developed linguistic and cultural specific or focused health services, right? Are those health services adequate for the communities that we're serving? And so this type of engagement was critical at every phase of our operations and in all services that we provide, but particularly COVID-19. And so this framework kind of highlights how community engagement cuts across our approach, right? It cuts across whether or not it helps influence, whether or not we adequately locate, right? And make sure that vaccine or other services are available. It helps us engaging with the community, helps us to ensure that we are designing the proper solutions that minimize access barriers. And finally, our efforts to build partnerships help inform other strategies related to vaccine hesitancy, efforts to increase awareness and build trust with the community. So as a result of our engagement with our community, we were able to kind of set up initiatives, COVID-19 services that really focus on those disparate populations, right, and their needs. So we have in-home vaccination services. We had in-home testing, COVID-19 testing. We made sure that our vaccine sites were varied, right? There were walk-up, drive-through, mass vac sites. We also have local community vaccination sites. And at those sites, we partner with faith-based and community organizations who host these vaccine events. And we see our community and faith-based leaders as kind of the gateway to the community. And they really are vital to our relationship repairing and rebuilding with the communities that we serve. And so we continue to engage the community. We are also working with our community-based organizations to provide COVID-19 resources and services such as rental assistance, eviction prevention initiatives. We also work with Ms. Chara to provide some of these services, and our leaders and elected officials are really also vital, right, to that engagement strategy that we implement at Harris County Public Health.
Thank you so much, Stacy, and it's a pleasure working with you guys as well. Let's go to our next speaker, Dr. Indefo, and hopefully I pronounced your name correctly, but if not, I apologize in advance.
Good afternoon. If you can give me access to share my screen, that would be awesome. Okay, perfect. Nope, not yet. Almost perfect. Well, good afternoon and congratulations to the 50 Hoops graduates. It's an honor to be here today. I have enjoyed hearing everyone's presentation so far. Today, I wanted to just spend a few minutes talking to you guys about the Texas Southern University Center for Biomedical and Minority Health Research. So Texas Southern University, for those of you who may not be in the Houston area, is a historically Black institution in the heart of Houston and has been part of the community for decades. And we have a College of Pharmacy and Health Sciences. We offer degrees in health studies, health communication, health education, social work, nutrition and dietetics. So we have a lot of health-related careers at Texas Southern University. And as such, we have a lot of researchers also at Texas Southern University. And one thing that we realized is that if our community is aware of the health-related research that happens in their community at an HBCU, that they would be maybe more open or more receptive to the results of that research. So with that, we were able to get funding for the Center for Biomedical Health Research starting last year in 2020, and it's a 5-year program that was funded to TSU to address health disparities with advances in biomedical innovations and particularly community engagement. This is a grant that TSU has received for a few years, but this is the first year that there is a community engagement piece. So within the community engagement core, our goal is to help the Houston community to increase clinical trial awareness and to reduce health disparities in ethnic minorities. So this center is funded by the National Institutes for Health, and it's particularly funded by the National Institute for Minority Health and Health Disparities. So within the community engagement core, there is the director. I'm one of the associate directors that works in this core. And I already mentioned it's to address health concerns in the greater Houston community, to increase research participation in the minority population, and also to help disseminate research findings. Because we believe that if he's aware that we are all part of that research that ends up, giving them options for treatment, that they might be a little bit more open to it. I think you may have seen where I have been commenting in the chat where when I see the researchers and they look like me, it's a very positive message to be able to send out to our community for them to know that the people who are actually behind this research are people who are like them. So with this grant, so far we do monthly seminars on different topics. And I know this is a busy slide, but I just put little snippets of some of the monthly seminars that we've done. They are open to the public. They're webinars, so, it may not be accessible to people who maybe don't have, internet access easily or smartphones to be able to stream. So we do try to partner with different organizations to maybe go and have the seminars in person or stream the seminars for them and bring in the equipment to be able to do that for people who may not be as tech savvy. When we started putting the proposal together, we didn't know that everything was going to be virtual. So far it's been virtual, but we're looking forward to when we can also do some of these in person. We have focus groups where we try to have conversations for different disease states that there's health disparities for. So we, of note, recently had one in May focused on prostate cancer, but we've done one on hypertension, we've done one on COVID. So we just look at the different disease states and try to have a focus group to talk about some of the reasons why there's possibly those disparities in our community. In the spring, we had a clinical research and engagement conference. Dr. Rouse, who was one of the speakers earlier, actually came and also talked to us about clinical trials in African Americans and why we should participate in clinical trials. And this is just a way to keep having that conversation so that we can engage the community in trusting the clinical trial process, if you will. Also on our website, the TSU website, we have a clinical trials guide where we sort of did the search already for, let's say a patient has diabetes or prostate cancer or breast cancer, where they can go to our website, and if they click, we've just sort of fed the clinicaltrials.gov information for them so they don't have to do the search themselves. They can just sort of click on the disease state of interest and the search is already done for them to see if there's a trial out there that they may be qualified to be a part of. And then we have various relationships or partnerships that we're trying to establish to be able to reach the community a little easier. Dawn is one of our partners. They're focused on diabetes awareness. So when we do programs that have to do with diabetes, we reach out to them. We had one of their instructors who was part of our monthly seminar last month, and he gave like a quick 10-minute workout plan for people who may not be very mobile. So we try to also work in things that give people tools to be able to live healthier lives. We've worked with the SHAPE Community Center where we went and actually live streamed the seminar there so that the community could have access to the information there. And then a lot of what we do or try to do is have a presence on social media. So we have a Facebook page, we have an Instagram, Twitter, YouTube channel, we're on LinkedIn. And when we have those seminars, there was actually a seminar this afternoon that conflicted with this time, but we had set it up in advance, so we couldn't change it. But when we have those seminars, we live stream both on Facebook and Instagram so that people who may not have all the information to be able to pre-register and come in can still watch live. And if anybody on here is interested in partnering with us or interested in just attending the webinars or looking at the content that we have available, you can send a text message to the number below, or you can just try to follow us if these are social media outlets that you normally engage in. You can send us an email, you can view our website. We do have, different talks sometimes on Instagram as well, where we just kind of discuss whatever the topic is from the previous month's seminar and answer whatever questions the public may have on whatever that topic was. And then we do little health education pieces as well, where we just kind of explain a few things about common disease states that have health disparities. So if you're following us on social media, you may just see a little blurb about something where we can just give a little health education on these different topics. The other aspect that we have also incorporated is trying to train as many people as we can to be community health workers. It requires about 160 hours of education, but we found a way to incorporate it for some of our students who are working on bachelor's and different health-related careers, but we're also working on community, being able to have this program established for anyone in the community who wants to become a community health worker. And while we're working on establishing that, we are providing community or continuing education to people who are currently community health workers. So we are trying to make sure that we have one or two of those a year, just to be able to provide continuing education to people who are already certified as community health workers. We try to work with KTSU, which is our radio station here on campus, and also National Public Radio, to be able to provide little health tidbits for our community as well. And one thing that I was excited to share with you guys, we're working with Dr. Rouse's group this summer, also to work with high school students and sort of talk to them about clinical trials and how that works and how drugs come to the market, and also play with, give them ideas on different health related careers, because we do know that when this information is coming from our community, it's better received. So we want as many people as we can to be in these careers, to be able to influence their friends and their family. We also have a magazine that we will publish, I think, once a year right now, maybe more often in the future. But we also have a magazine that talks about the things that are happening in the greater Houston area, in the minority community, in the healthcare space, to be able to hopefully close some of those gaps in healthcare. Oh, I did have a slide on the summer health research. So we worked to present to some of those younger students, which was a lot of fun for us. So in conclusion, please follow us on social media, join our monthly webinars or seminars if you can. Tell your family, tell your friends, tell your place of worship about us. We'd love to partner with you. Our goal truly is to end health disparities, but is to really utilize the historically Black college and university that is right here in the heart of Houston, to be able to do that, to be able to support our community, to, make us all healthier. So thank you so much for inviting me and having me on here for this wonderful event.
Thank you so much. This is really, really great information. Thank you for your presentation. I want to introduce our next speaker, Dr. Bennett. I know we're a little bit past our scheduled time, but please stay with us. Dr. Bennett has a great topic of support for breast cancer survivors. Dr. Bennett.
Thank you. I'm going to share my screen, I hope. I want to thank Cassandra for the invitation and congratulate the graduates. I'm Dr. Jenny Bennett. I'm a 25-year breast cancer survivor, and it's been a journey. It's really been one where I have really, truly enjoyed working with breast cancer patients. I almost died after breast cancer, so I decided to do something to give back and to help others diagnosed with breast cancer. Therefore, Reconstruction of a Survivor was created as a nonprofit breast cancer organization. Part of what I do is giving back is I also have participated in 2 clinical trials at MD Anderson Cancer Center. I've done several things at MD Anderson Cancer Center. as well as groundbreaking for the breast center over there out of the Nellie B. Conley Center. And finally, the other thing that I do is I review research proposals for the Department of Defense, as well as serve as a breast cancer advocate for MD Anderson Cancer Center and other institutions. Well, let's see if I can get the next slide. Yeah. Try and get to the next slide. There we go. Reconstruction of a Survivor was started in 2007. We only had one support group at that time with a curriculum. We still have a curriculum that's focused, a curriculum on different topics, but we also have now trained facilitators. And at that time, we only had one facilitator who was trained. And then we also have a culturally diverse board of directors. The support groups normally meet face-to-face on a monthly basis. However, because of COVID, they are meeting only monthly virtual. We have the sessions at Houston Methodist in the Medical Center, Houston Methodist Willowbrook, Methodist Katy, San Jacinto, which is in Baytown. We also have sessions at HCA, the Women's Hospital, HCA in Pearland, the VA Hospital, Good Hope Church, UTMB, Texas City, and Itasca City United Methodist Church. The other thing that we do is we provide financial assistance. And this specifically is an application process for those women in treatment who attend our support groups. We've paid rent, we've paid mortgages, we've paid utilities, delinquent property taxes, medical bill. We also had one patient who was homeless, sleeping on the street. She would go to the support group meeting at Willowbrook, but refused to go to MD Anderson for her chemotherapy treatment, when she was stage 4. So what we did was we provided her extended stay room so she could go back to treatment. And when she did, by the time she did, the cancer was everywhere and there was not much they could do for her. And then most recently, we had a 40-year-old diagnosed. Within 2 weeks, she was gone. And had one treatment of chemotherapy, but the cancer was just too advanced at that time. So it wasn't COVID, but it was the breast cancer. So she had no life insurance and no health insurance. And what we did was the social worker at Methodist Katy called and said, can you help with the financial program? Yeah, we can, but we have stipulations. So I prayed about it and God said, do it, make a donation to help pay for the young lady's funeral. And that's what we did, that was the first. We also provide breast health education sessions with the twist. Well, you may say, what's a twist? Well, we make it fun and enjoyable for the women who are there with door prizes and what have you. We specifically target undiagnosed African-American women. In the organization, we don't pay salaries. We have office space in the Galleria area, which is where I am now, paid by Kava Health. We're in the BBVA Bank building, but our locations are housed in the area where the hospitals provide the service. And then in October, we're having a golf tournament on October the 8th, which is our fundraiser, because that's how we get our funding. One of the ways we get funding at Quail Valley. So if you visit our website, you'll find more information. And additionally, Louise Fuddruckers approached us to do a fundraiser in October at all 57 locations statewide. So there'll be information about that closer to the time when we approach the time for selling the mugs that they have helped create. So what we do is we take people who've been diagnosed with breast cancer from hopelessness and think there is no hope, as I did, and to take them to hope. This is our website, roasurvivor.org. This is my email address, my mobile number, and our office phone number. And I just want to thank you. Cassandra told me 4 slides, and I have 4 slides. Thank you guys for listening and participating. If you have questions, I'd be more than happy to address them.
Thank you, Dr. Bennett. Does anyone have any questions? I think the questions that were in the chat, we've answered those. Does anybody have any additional questions? Okay, well, Cassandra, I think it's back to you.
Okay, thanks. Guys, we're at the end almost. We have one more poll, and then I'll give the summation for our event today.
You'll have 10 more seconds.
Okay. Let's see. Okay. These are your results. If you have any comments about the results, if something was interesting to you or just struck you as you didn't think that would be, the case, write comments in the comment box, in the chat box. Okay, now for the wrap up. Dr. Matthew talked about the National Cancer Act. In 1971, President Nixon declared war on cancer by signing the National Cancer Act. We are still fighting that war. And I believe it will take all of us, health professionals, researchers, academia, business, community, and faith leaders working together to win it. Thanks to our speakers, our moderators, all of our webinar participants, the National Black Leadership Initiative on Cancer, and all of our planning committee members, and our dynamic duo, Ed and Pat Sanders, for making the 50 Hoops Legends event a reality. We did have a winner for our 50 Hoops gift box. And what we did, we took the names from the registration, put them on an app, and selected a winner, and it's Delanor Manson. If Delanor Manson is still with us, please write your address in the chat box. In closing, please join us tomorrow at 4:30 p.m. Central Standard Time as we continue this conversation to educate, empower, and elevate this work with legend Ms. Valerie Worthy in North Carolina. Stay safe and stay connected. And I'll turn it over to Pat and Ed for one last comment. Thank you.
We're just holding back the tears of joy, Cassandra. Thank you. And thank all of you doctors, all of you who have participated. We are just filled with joy. Thank you, our alpha, Cassandra. Thank you so very much. God bless you all. Be safe and have a good week. See you tomorrow night. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.